Hey everybody, Jake here, and today I just wanted to touch real quick on filling systems for pens. I'm going to go over all the filling systems that I have, which are, a decent majority of what's on the modern market. So I figured we'd take a look at some of those, discuss some of the pros and cons, and things like that. We're going to start real simple with a cartridge-only pen, standard international short cartridge only, which are probably the most common cartridges. Um, For this example, we're just going to use the Kaweco Lilliput. So you can see the body of this pen is very short, and because of that, it can really only take a standard international cartridge short. There are special converters that are made for it, but they're not very commonly used. So these can go in pretty much any cartridge converter pen, as far as I know. This is a Kaweco branded one, but all standard international short cartridges look the same. There are standard international long cartridges available. I don't ever use those though. I'd prefer a converter. But these are always an option, and if you have a very small pen, they may be your only option. So keep in mind that any of the pens I have coming up that use standard international cartridges, which there's only one, it can also accept those cartridges. Alright, so next we'll take a look at probably the most common. This accepts a standard international converter or cartridge. I don't believe this accepts the long ones, this particular pen, but This is a Jinhao 992, which is not a Monteverde Monzo at all. Okay, so this takes, as you can see through here, a standard international cartridge or converter. It takes cartridges too, though. I'm gonna get it at some point, I promise. So this is just a standard international converter. You'll notice the end looks exactly like the short cartridge I just had over there. Holds about the same amount of ink, maybe a little less, but you can refill these from a bottle. So most of these use some sort of piston mechanism where you can twist it and it will, pull the ink in and out. These are very common. The converters are fairly cheap, easy to find, much cheaper to purchase a converter and bottled ink than it is to buy cartridges if you have that option. But that's completely up to you. These hold less ink than a standard international long, maybe about the same amount as standard international short, but that's, completely up to preference. Alright, now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and discuss some pros and cons of each. Okay. The biggest pro of the short cartridge is the fact that they are disposable. You can take this out of this pen, throw it in the trash, pull a fresh one out of your pocket or your bag or wherever, and pop it in, and you're good to go. That's about as simple as it gets in the world of fountain pens. You do pay the price in some other areas, but it's very nice. And if you're using the same ink color, it's super easy, even if you're not really, honestly. If it's the same brand, you should be fine. I'd recommend cleaning out after each ink color. But if I just wanted to put another blue in this, I just throw that one away and put another blue in. Now, the converters, you do have to clean these. These are not fun to clean. They're not nearly as bad as some of the ones we have coming up, but you'd have to flush it, in and out with water, or take a syringe and jet it down in there to clean it out. So you just have to keep that in mind, that the cleaning process with this is a bit more tedious. And comparing these two now, I can see that. Let's compare the ink capacity real quick. Yeah, I think they're probably pretty similar. The standard international short may hold a little bit more, but where it narrows down here at the end, that's certainly something to keep in mind. It may hold a little less, but similar enough ink capacity, I'm sure. Now these are refillable, but pain in the butt to clean. These can also be refilled if you have a syringe. They are worse to clean. I wouldn't recommend that, but some people do that way. Especially if you have bottled ink and you want to use it, you don't want to keep purchasing cartridges, but you only have, a Lilliput. That's a perfectly viable option. So the plus side to these is they're generally interchangeable between all brands as long as they use it standard international. Some may fit, some, you know. But that's the biggest upside, is that they're very common and for the most part universal. Probably the easiest form of converter or refill system to clean is a cartridge converter, even though it's still not really all that easy. Alright, let's go into some proprietary converters. These also take proprietary cartridges. So here we have the Lommy Safari and the Platinum 3776 Century. I'll go ahead and show you this converter first. So you can see here, these hold, it may not look like it, but it dips down quite a bit in here, and I'll try to show you that real quick. So you can see it holds probably a little bit more than the standard international, maybe about the same, but it is proprietary. This is Platinum's take on it. Pilot and Sailor also have proprietary converters and cartridges, but there are these as well. Most of them generally use the same sort of piston mechanisms, so same pros and cons, just a little bit of proprietary stuff going on. And now for a converter that I believe, actually this has a cartridge in it. I can show you the converter for this though. This is a Lommy cartridge, and these hold a crap ton of ink. They're pretty big, so those are a very decent option. And you can see the end's a little different than the standard international. Very similar though, as far as, you know, the standard international cartridge, short or long. Similar cleaning and maintenance process. And same thing with converters. As long as they're, you know, a piston style converter, you're going to get about the same. They do have squeeze converters, especially Pilot and Kaveco, but we won't really bother with those too much because they're not great. Here's the converter for the Lommy. It does have some notches so it sinks in there, and you can see this holds a vastly larger amount of ink than a standard international cartridge. I actually really like these cartridges, even though they are expensive, and a lot of Lommy pens don't come with them, etc. It's a bit of a pain, but very similar to the cartridge converter of the previous few pens. So even though these converters and cartridges look different, they're really not all that different. Pretty similar. Let's get on to some interesting stuff. This is another Platinum pen, so it will take Platinum converters and cartridges, but this particular pen is eyedropper converted. This is a Platinum Preppy. There have been some aesthetic modifications to it, but this is what's called eyedroppering a pen. That's where you fill the entire body cavity with ink. So what you do is you can apply some silicone grease on the threads. Let me see if I can get it to focus here. You won't really be able to see it too much, but you can see the ink won't go past a certain point on the threads where I've applied the grease. This doesn't really affect the pen a whole lot. It does add some risk of leakage, spilling, and stuff, but you can see the amount of ink you can fit in here is just astronomically larger than a cartridge or a converter of any kind. So that's always an option, especially with cheaper pens. I'm not so worried about it. You cannot do this with pens with metal parts, unless it's titanium, which I don't know a whole lot of pens that have titanium. We'll get to one in a minute, but so this holds a large amount of ink, a lot of care and maintenance on these. You know, fairly easy to clean. You just really just pour water in it until it runs clear, and then you're good. Drying out is going to be a bit of an issue, but a whole lot easier to clean than a converter, but it's a lot more maintenance overall, so I would rank this probably lower in the conventional sense. Also, once it gets past a certain point, you want to refill it, just because the heat in your hand will cause the air to expand, and your pen can burp on you. But there's an eyedropper converted Platinum Preppy. Just wanted to show you guys that one as well. Now onto a very popular filling system as of late, in my opinion, the piston fill. We have two kinds here. This is the TWSBI 580 All. So you can see you just twist this knob on the back, and the piston mechanism operates. You put it down here, stick in your ink bottle, and you suck your ink up. This holds a very large amount of ink. It holds everything from here down to here. Not as much as an eyedropper, much more than a cartridge or a converter. A lot more of a pain to clean. Not nearly as much maintenance as everyone makes it out to be. You don't have to take this out and grease it, you know, probably more than once every year or two, to be honest. But they're very fun mechanisms to use. I don't change ink color in this pen really at all because of that, though. So just keep that in mind. They're a bit more maintenance as far as cleaning and things like that, but they're really fun. This is a Noodler's Conrad, and it uses the same kind of filling mechanism, except it's not clear so you can't see it. This particular one, though, uses a blind cap. So same thing, you just twist this knob, and it activates a piston mechanism inside, and you can fill the pen that way. Alright, so these are very different than the cartridge converter to some degree. They use the same mechanism as a converter, but on a much larger scale. It's kind of like a converter and an eyedropper pen had a baby, and you know. So you get a pretty large ink capacity. A lot of maintenance on these pens, though. Just as far as cleaning, it's not nearly as bad as an eyedropper. But in general, the larger amount of ink you go up storing in the body, the more cleaning is going to be a bit of a chore. But these are really nice. They're a good balance between cleaning, maintenance, pain, and ink capacity. So their piston mechanisms are among my favorite. I really enjoy them. You can get a lot of ink, and I especially like on the TWSBI because you can kind of see yourself depleting it, and it kind of adds a sense of accomplishment in some sick way that I'm spending, using money gradually. But there's your pistons. Different than cartridge converter, but not quite as much as you might think. Very similar to converters. Very good pens, though. I like the mechanism a lot for pistons, and especially on, well, either one of these really, but especially on the TWSBI, completely disassemblable, so you can see all the inner parts and grease everything up as needed, which you can't do for the most part on a converter, but they're much cheaper. So, and last up, probably the most unique filling system that I have, and a not very common one, but probably my favorite filling system, a Vac Filler. So what this does is it holds, as you can see, a quite substantial amount of ink. Not quite as much as the Platinum Preppy, the eyedropper pen, but pretty freaking close. So if I had to pick between eyedropper and this, it'd be this one every day. This uses, you can see a rod in there. It uses that rod, and you unscrew this cap on the back, and you can see the rod lifting, and you can pull it. And as you pull that rod out all the way, it creates suction. So you pull that rod out all the way, you put it down your ink, and you press it in, and it uses suction to suck up an amount of ink. Holds a large amount. These suck to clean, no pun intended. But they're my favorite still. I love filling these. I like filling them, I like using them. Very enjoyable for me, and I don't mind the cleaning. I don't swap colors a ton in this pen because of that, but you don't really have to. You don't have to refill very often because it holds such a large amount of ink. And if you just want to compare this real quick to the 580, you can see it's probably about double. There's a little bit of space taken up by the metal bar inside, which is made out of titanium, so it will not rust. But this pen holds a very large amount of ink, and I really like this filling mechanism. It's great. So, just to bring out kind of an example of each filling mechanism. So we have a Vac Filler. We have a piston filler. We have an eyedropper. And a cartridge converter. I'll go ahead and bring out cartridge only, just for fun. So, again, kind of as your ink level, ink capacity goes up, you're gonna get more cleaning, kind of maintenance issues, but it kind of comes with the territory. Now, because of that, because of this increased ink capacity, you have to clean less and things like that, so that's wonderful. And if you get a VAC 700 and only use the same ink color for your entire life, you really don't have to clean it all that much. So that's always an option. But there are pros and cons to each one, depending on who you ask. If you're on the go all the time, you don't have time to fill from an ink bottle, grab a cartridge converter or a cartridge only pen. great option for you. Or on the flip side of that, if you work a really long day but you have time at the end of the day to refill, go with the Vac 700 or any Vac filler. A Pilot Custom 823, a lot of Visconti's power fillers. They can call them whatever they want to, but they're Vac fillers as well. You know, go with the Vac filler. It's great for, you know, long days. A piston's great for that as well. If you're just taking notes throughout the day and you don't really want to worry about, you know, cleaning all that often, but you want to use some interesting colors, go with Cartridge Converter. You really can't go wrong. If you like changing ink a lot, also, I'm going to recommend Cartridge Converter because you can burn through that ink very, very quickly, or quicker than you think, and have the opportunity to refill and use new inks. And they're not really that bad to clean. I don't enjoy them, but I really don't enjoy cleaning any pens, to be honest. But, yeah, that's a good one. And if you're looking for a massive ink capacity and you don't mind the maintenance and the refilling and the chores and the possible spillage, go with eyedropper. I personally, this is the only pen I've ever eyedroppered, and it's going to be the only pen I ever eyedropper as far as I'm concerned at the moment, just because the maintenance and everything that goes into it isn't really worth it to me. I'd much rather use a piston or a vac filler. But there's the basic filling mechanisms that are available in today's modern market. There are a lot of vintage types, and there are still some that I'm missing here, like crescent fillers and things like that. But for the most part, this is what you're going to see on the market. So whether you need to go for portability, longevity, or just kind of an interesting filling mechanism, if you can even really call it that, there's plenty of options for you. So just look around, see what suits you, how often you want to clean it, what kind of ink capacity you need, how often you want to change inks, things like that. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and keep an eye out for upcoming pen reviews, including a review of the Lilliput next week. Thanks, guys.